Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Check 2, 3, 4.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Great place, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
I saw your website.
Let's see if I can get this out of here.
There we go.
There you go, Alan.
Good morning. I'm Alan Glassman. I'm the chair of the Belknap County Republican Committee, and I'd like to introduce Frank Tilton, retired colonel in the Army and also state representative, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Frank. I just want to, before we get started here with Governor Christie, I just wanted to point out that the Belknap County Republicans are pretty active in this presidential series of campaigns, all 17 of them at the moment. We'd love to have as many people, as many of you, come to some of our meetings. We're going to be trying to put on as many events as we can with the various presidential candidates between now and the primary on February 9th. We meet on Wednesday, second Wednesdays of every month at the Top of the Town restaurant in Belmont. But now I'd like to you Commander Bill North. He is the commander of the Laconia VFW. Bill?
Thank you. Thank you all for you. Is we're kind of a dying breed. Governor of New Jersey, Governor Christie.
New Jersey had had no private sector job growth for 8, and so did every day in government. That's the same approach. More important in America than enforcing the law. And destroying lives. And it's not restricted to just here. And what else is he bequeathing us? Hillary Rodham Clinton, who now believes that the law doesn't apply to her. And when I'm President of the United States, I'm going to make sure that the law applies equally and to everyone so lawlessness ends in this country and we start enforcing the law so the people who play by the rules, pay their taxes, and live their lives in a law-abiding way are the ones who are the winners in this country, not the people who don't. But one last thing on lawlessness. I mentioned drugs in that part of our conversation. I want to tell you something this morning. I'm pro-life. See, but I'm pro-life not just when they're in the womb. I'm pro-life for the entire life. And that means you need to be pro-life not only for the baby in the womb, we need to be pro-life for the 16-year-old drug addict who's laying on the floor of the county jail. So I don't believe we can incarcerate our way out of this problem. I believe that we have to give treatment to people who have a disease. This is a disease, and we need to treat it as such. So that's why in New Jersey, we're the first state where if you're a nonviolent drug offender, first time, you don't go to jail, you go to mandatory inpatient drug treatment. And I'm doing that because I absolutely believe in my heart, as someone who's pro-life, that every life is precious, every life is redeemable, and every life is an individual gift from God, and we have to make sure we try to give those people the tools they need to redeem their lives. And I know that up here in New Hampshire, you are suffering from the scourge of this heroin epidemic that's taking lives every day. We need a president of the United States who's going to stand behind that seal and say drug addiction is a disease, and the way America is going to defeat it is not by just throwing people in jail. The way America is going to defeat it is by giving treatment to those people who have a disease, just like we would treat someone who had cancer or diabetes or any other disease. Now, let me be clear, that doesn't mean that I favor drug use. I do not. And in fact, as President of the United States, making sure that lawlessness ends will mean that right now, if you're getting high in Colorado or Washington State, smoke up now, because when I'm President of the United States, that's going to be over. Marijuana is illegal in this country. And now if the country wants to change that, we have a Congress who could change it and a president who might sign it. But instead what this president has done is say, well, if you don't like the law, just don't enforce it. So in Colorado and Washington State, if you don't like the marijuana law, well then just don't follow it. And me, the president, as the federal law enforcer, I won't do anything about it. Now see, there might be some people even in this audience who think, well, marijuana's not so bad, and why are you worried about that, Governor? Well, I think it is bad. I think it's a gateway drug to these other drugs. I think it destroys your brain. I think it lowers productivity, and I think it's bad for our country. But even if you don't feel the same way, I would suggest to you with all respect that you don't let your president just enforce the law as he likes, because then tomorrow he may not enforce the law that you think is important. And that's why I said what I said at the top about this being a country of laws, not of men and women. We cannot allow our own personal preferences as leaders to decide what we're going to enforce and what we're not going to enforce. I took an oath of office as governor of New Jersey. And that oath said, I will enforce the laws of the state of New Jersey. It did not say, I'll enforce the laws that I like as governor of the state of New Jersey. Because believe me, man, I had 3 Democratic governors before me. There's more laws I don't like than I can count. But I got to enforce them. That's my job. And this president has brought that style of lawlessness to the Oval Office. And it has diminished the way Americans see their government at home, and it's diminished the way people around the world see our government in America. America has to be the world's leader. We are the one indispensable nation to making sure that freedom and liberty still exist on this planet. There are despots and dictators and religious zealots around this world who want to impose their point of view on us. And what America has always stood for is not imposing our point of view on anybody, but letting every point of view exist and live peacefully and freely together. That's why our First Amendment says we're not going to establish a religion in this country. It's not because America is against religion, it's because America loves religion. It's because we believe that whatever you believe in your heart, as long as you do so peacefully and faithfully, you should be able to practice your religion. Believe me, the mullahs in Iran do not agree with us. They want everyone to be a Muslim, and a Muslim the way they believe that Islam should be practiced. And now this president has given those radicals the pathway to a nuclear weapon, the most destructive weapon the world has ever invented. These are dangerous times, everyone. And we need a president who knows how to deal with this. So I'll end with this, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time this morning on your questions. Why is it important that I've been U.S. Attorney for 7 years before I became governor as a qualification to be president of the United States? Because of the 17 people that Alan mentioned, I am the only one who has prosecuted terrorists and put them in jail. I'm the only one who has reviewed applications under the Patriot Act. I'm the only one who has gone to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to find terrorists around the world who are trying to invade our country. President George W. Bush named me U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And the next day, my wife and my brother did as they did every day. They traveled from New Jersey through the World Trade Center to their jobs in Lower Manhattan. My brother to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, my wife to her office 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. And that morning, when I saw that the first plane had hit the first building, I called her. And she said what we were all being told. She said, well, it's just a commuter plane that got misguided, hit the Trade Center. It's no big deal. I can see the fire from here. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. And while we were on the phone, the second plane hit the second building. And then we all knew it wasn't fine. And she said, they're making me evacuate the building to the basement. I'll call you later. Now, on that day, we had 3 of our 4 children already born. Andrew was 8, Sarah was 5, and Patrick was 1. And for the next 5.5 hours, I didn't hear from her. I called over and over and over again and got no answer. And our children were told at school about what had happened in Lower Manhattan. And our 2 oldest who were in school knew that that's where their mom worked. And when they came home from school, I knew I was going to have to tell them when they asked, is Mom okay? I don't know. Luckily, 10 minutes before they came home from school, she called me. From the first payphone she could find that worked after having walked from Lower Manhattan up to Midtown with her colleagues to get out of harm's way. I'm one of the lucky ones. My wife and my brother came home that night alive. But 3,000 of our fellow citizens did not. See, for most of the other folks in this race, talking about terrorism is theoretical. They read about it, they heard about it. We lost a good friend in our parish who died that day in 9/11, and we sat with his widow as she sat by the phone saying, don't worry, Frank will call soon. Sure, he's fine. Maybe he's in a hospital. He hit his head. Maybe he is. Those stories were repeated over and over and over. Frank didn't come home. And now the gymnasium at our church gym worked in the World Trade Center at nearly the top. Puts his father's picture on the cover page. And around the world, when we have a president who calls the ISIS the JV, and it admits that he's got no strategy to defeat them, we're forgetting that young man's father. I want to remind you of the enormity of what happened on September 11th and the fact that it could happen again if we don't have a president who knows how to fight terrorism and makes securing the homeland his #1 priority. If we were to give a moment of silence for every one of the lost souls on 9/11, just 1 minute, right? We're coming up on the 14th anniversary in just a few weeks of 9/11. Those families have lived for 14 years without their loved ones. The horror of that day has lived with them every minute of every day for nearly the last 14 years. If we were just to give 1 minute this morning of silence for each one of those victims, we would be sitting here in silence until 10:30 on Monday morning, nonstop, till 10:30 on Monday morning, if we gave every victim just 1 moment of silence. That's the enormity of what happened to us that day, and I'm reminding you of this because we need a president who remembers this. We need a president who remembers how we felt the days and weeks after 9/11, and who is as determined as you are to make sure that this never happens again to the United States. Well, you don't do that by promoting lawlessness. You don't do that by giving Iranians nuclear weapons. You don't do that by pulling back on our intelligence capability. You don't do that by weakening our military. You don't do that by being a president who believes that what he thinks is more important than the laws we've passed in our democracy. And so I take a very direct approach to this. You'll be shocked to hear that. I take a very direct approach to this. When I take the oath of office on January 20th, 2017, you are going to know once more, once again, that you have a president in the Oval Office who will put securing the lives and the liberty of the American people first, protecting the Constitution of the United States, and making sure that those people who work hard, who play by the rules, who pay the taxes, and who live their lives trying to make a better America for our children and grandchildren will be the people who determine the winners and losers once again in this country, and not a bunch of government bureaucrats sitting in Washington, D.C. That's the kind of president I'm going to be, and if that's the kind of president you want, then you came to the right place this morning, everybody, because we're going to start to change America right here, right now, this morning. I hope you join me doing that. Oh yeah, one last thing. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And there will not be any confusion about that either. Sometimes we look at Barack Obama and we think, what is the guy thinking? What's he really care about? You won't have to worry about with me as president. There may be nights where you just might turn off your TV. Okay, enough already, man, we heard you. But you're never gonna have to wonder who I am. Just in case I don't do well this morning, we have reinforcements. I have brought with me the lady of the state of New Jersey, my wife of 29 years. I want you to meet her. Please. This is my questions. I don't answer yelled out questions. Are now 22. And we added one on the back end because I came home. And Bridget's now 12. I know that yelling things out all at one time just gets me to stare down at my dinner plate and not even there. So you just raise your hand, I'll call on you. We have folks here with a mic for you and everyone else can hear you, and we'll have a good morning. the State House in Trenton every day. Government and lobbying gets stopped. And so people in the administration not going to be able to walk right out the door and go be lobbying. Not right. Not what they should be doing. And the fact is, what you need is a lobbyist as president who works for you. See, this is why people think the tax code in this country is rigged against them and for the rich. Want to know why? Because it is. It is. And it's not just lobbyists. It's the people who pay the lobbyists. See, because the lobbyists wouldn't be there for free. They're not coming there just because they're great Americans and they figure, why not have a little input on the way the laws are made or stopped? And so my view on this is that you need to have an attitude in the Oval Office that says that there's only one group of people who got me here. There'll be lots of people who donate to my campaign. And I that they donate, but I tell every one of my donors the same thing. If you donate to me, you're donating to a professional ingrate. And what I mean by that is, you have to donate to me and understand that what you get in return is my best effort and my best judgment and nothing else. And so we need to get someone in the Oval Office who continues that attitude. We need money to run campaigns, and I don't have any way to fix that. It's a country of 330 million people from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, and we got to communicate. But what matters is what I do. In response to that, or in response to lobbyists who are getting paid by big special interests, the biggest special interest in this country has to return to being the citizens of this country. And I think that one of the great things that I've learned so far as president, that while the people who donate money to you are important, and there's no one more important than you, because people, with rare exception, if they're not, unless they're from New Hampshire, are not voting. And the only way you win the New Hampshire is to get more votes than anybody. And you're the ones who are going to go into that voting booth for and vote for. You got to follow up. Sure. Where in New Jersey? Princeton, New Jersey. How about that?
Why, when the bill is presented, are they has nothing
Anything done that works well for the American? Desk in the form of bills, instead of doing the things you're talking about. And that's why I'm so frustrated. All those things combined, what have they done? By 2014, without being in some regional greenhouse gas initiative with some tax and, cap and trade tax scheme, New Jersey has met its clean air goals for 2020. And everyone's still breathing in New Jersey. They're inhaling, they're exhaling, and I don't believe, and never said, because I don't believe that people breathing contribute to climate change. But we cannot be climate change is not real. It is. It is real. But it's no different than it's been 100 years ago, 400 years ago, 600 years ago. The climate's changing all the time. As more humans. But there's 5 things. All right? I've met President Peña Nieto twice. For some 2,000-mile wall, no matter. Veterans Haven in the north part of the state.
100%. Ask you, how would I go about getting that 100%? Who do I go see to get this, to get it fixed?
Well, the answer is, as I stand here right now, I don't know. What we're going to do, my staff's going to get your name and number before we leave today, and then I'll have someone from my office of Department of Military and Veterans Affairs call you and give you the best advice that we can give you on how to do that. I'm a trained lawyer, so that means I can make up an answer right here on the spot. But I don't want to do that to you, so I don't know the answer, so let's get your name and number. One of my staff members will come and get it from you, and then we'll have someone from the New Jersey Department of Military and Veterans Affairs call you and try to help you make your way through that maze.
Thank you very much, Governor
Thank you,
Christie.
sir.
Governor, in your perception, or what do you perceive to be the three greatest challenges or concerns facing our country, and what do you propose we do about them?
Thank you. The first is what I was talking about before, which is our national security and homeland security. See, nothing else matters if we don't do that right. I want you all, I brought 9/11 up in the beginning because I think that it's an important touchstone moment for our country to remember what our priorities are. Do you remember what you felt like in the weeks after 9/11? Weren't we all convinced there was going to be another attack? Weren't we all convinced that we were just going to have to put up with this over and over again? And how did it make us feel? We felt scared. We felt betrayed. We were worried about our children's future. We weren't productive at work. I mean, all those things happen with a feeling of a lack of security. So the first and biggest challenge we have is to reestablish national security around the world and at home. That means a few things. We have to rebuild our military. This president has cut our military back so significantly that our men and women are stretched from an equipment perspective, from a manpower perspective, and I've laid out a specific plan. You can go on my website at chrischristie.com and see it, but we have to have no fewer than 500,000 active duty soldiers in the Army. We have to have no fewer than 185,000 active duty Marines in the Marine Corps. We're heading down towards a 260 ship Navy, the smallest Navy that we've had since well into the early part of the last century. We need to get back up to a 350 ship Navy so we can make sure the waters are free and open for everyone who wants to travel them. And we need to make sure our Air Force, instead of being cut by 50%, which is what the president's doing, no fewer than 2,600 operational aircraft in our Air Force so that we can make sure the skies are safe as well. But we also need to rebuild our alliances around the world. Can you imagine if you're an American ally right now? You got to be looking at this going, what is going on? Why can't we believe the President of the United States anymore? Because we can't. He told the Syrian people, if President Assad uses chemical weapons on you, we will take him out. He drew a red line in Syria. Assad has now killed 230,000 Syrians, and the president has done nothing. Now, I don't know whether I would have said, if he uses chemical weapons, I'll take him out, but man, once the President of the United States says it, you better do it. Because you know what our other allies are thinking now? We can't believe anything this guy says. And people are dying, and they're running to Jordan. And it is overrunning that allied country of ours with Syrian refugees who are just running away from Assad. So we need to rebuild. That's just one example. We need to rebuild our alliances. So what I would do in my first weeks as president is individually, one at a time, to invite over the British Prime Minister, the French President, the German Chancellor. We need to invite the Prime Minister from Israel. We need to invite our allies, the President of Mexico, the Prime Minister of Canada, one at a time to come over and sit down and say, what's your vision for what you want to be doing around the world, and how can we work together? And when they leave that meeting, to stand up, shake their hand, and look them in the eye and say, I will never ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself, and I will never break my word to you. That's what our allies need to hear again. And our adversaries, they need to understand the limits of our patience. Now, I'm not looking for war around the world, everybody. I'm really not. But the way to avoid war is to build a strong military and to be very clear about the limits of your patience. And people say lots of different things about me over the course of my career in public life, but never that I've been misunderstood. Never that I've been unclear. I think Vladimir Putin would understand exactly what I meant when we were sitting across the table from each other. And even if he had no shirt on, he was on the back of a horse, I wouldn't quite care. Right? Wouldn't matter to me. I talk to him exactly the same way the Chinese would know the limits of our patience. And I would tell them to stop hacking into our computer systems, or you want cyber warfare, you're going to get it. I mean, we need to be able to say these things to our adversaries as well around the world. And to the mullahs in Iran, I'd say, if you develop a nuclear weapon, we will make sure you don't have it for long. They need to understand the limits of our patience. So that's on national security. Second is entitlement reform. I'm the only candidate in this race of 17 candidates who has put out a detailed plan on reforming entitlements, and here's why. Do you know now in today's federal budget, 71% of the federal spending, 71% is on entitlements or debt service? Do you know what it was when John Kennedy was elected president 55 years ago? 26%. We have turned our government completely upside down. This is not sustainable. Harvard and Dartmouth just came out with a study that said Social Security will be insolvent in 7 to 8 years. Of course, the Obama administration says it's 15 years. And so Harvard and Dartmouth was asked about that. Well, why does the Social Security Administration say it's 15 years? They said they did two bad things when you're analyzing Social Security. They overestimated fertility and underestimated life expectancy. It's a bad combination on Social Security. You're overestimating the number of people who are going to be there to pay in. You're underestimating the number of people who are going to be living longer to draw out. So here's the thing. No politician likes to talk about Social Security. They say it's the third rail of American politics. Don't touch it. So we're not going to touch it. We're going to hug it. We're going to grab it and hug it. Here's what we need to do. We need to raise the retirement age 2 years, and we're going to phase that in over 25 years. All right? So hear me now. I want to raise it 2 years, but it's going to be 1 month a year for 25 years. The world will not stop spinning on its axis. And next fall, when I'm running against Hillary Clinton and she runs that commercial that says Governor Christie wants to throw grandma off the cliff, right? Remember something. For that to be true, it's going to have to be the highest cliff in the world that's going to take 25 years to hit bottom, or gravity will have stopped working the way it's supposed to, okay? We need to fix this problem. And here's why we need to raise it. You know, the average life expectancy now of a woman in America is 83 years old. The average life expectancy of a man is 79. I saw a couple of you ladies smiling. I want you to know that 10 years ago, you had a 6-year lead on us. Now you have a 4-year lead. We are gaining on you. And that 4-year vacation you were expecting from us, you may not get. That 4 years in the end when you finally can take a deep breath and say, all right, he's gone, all right. Whew, I can relax a little bit. You may not get it because we're catching you. These programs were developed for when people lived into their mid-60s. So we're now living 15 to 20 years longer, drawing Social Security 15 for 20 years longer. Of course we need to change it. And it's a blessing that we need to change it. Don't we all want to live longer, better lives? It's not something to be sad about, it's something to be happy about. And I also say, there's two choices on how to balance the books in any instance, right? Put more money in or spend less money. It's the only way to do it. You're looking at your family budget. Either you got to go get another job to put more money in the checking account, or you got to cancel some of the things that you do because you don't have the money to pay for it. Social Security is the same way. It's no different. It's a math equation. Hillary Clinton's going to say that what she wants to do is to increase Social Security taxes. She wants to increase the amount we take the cap off Social Security, and take more money from folks. The alternative is what I want to do, which is to say for those people who are the most successful in our country, people who are making $200,000 a year or more in retirement income. Now, I'm talking about you're retired. This is not your house or anything else. This is investments, money you've saved that throws off $200,000 a year. That means you've got about $4 or $5 million bucks at a minimum saved. God bless you. Congratulations. You've done great by your family, and the country has done great by you in giving you the opportunity to have that kind of security. Let me ask you a question. You're making $200,000 a year in retirement income. You really need a Social Security check? It's really going to change your way of life? It's not. Fact is that we need those people to say, yeah, I know I paid into the system. I had a guy in Exeter say to me, I paid into the system, I want my money back. I said, well, are you going to make $200,000 a year more in retirement? He said, no. I said, well, then you're getting your money. under my plan. Don't worry about it. I had another woman just last week at a town hall meeting say, don't call it an entitlement. I paid for it. And I said, okay, ma'am, let me ask you a question. Are you on Social Security? She said, yes, I am. Of course, it's not polite to ask a lady how old she is. So the way I went about that was I said, how many years have you been collecting Social Security? And 12 years. I said, that you have already taken out every, that makes it an entitlement. She came up, person on my staff afterwards and said, that was a really good answer. It's a true answer. Now, of course, there's interest involved in all that helps to add to it. But at 12 years, you've pretty much exhausted what you put in plus. We need to understand that. And so here's why I favor lessening the benefits of the truly wealthy versus bringing in more money. Remember, they told you Social Security was a trust fund. They told you they put it in a trust fund, and that's money. We're saving it for you right over here. Don't worry about it. Trust us, the government. We'll keep your money right here. We take it from your paycheck every 2 weeks. It's right over here. Don't worry about it. Guess what's over there? A stack of IOUs. We're spending the money now. They lied to us. It happened. There's nothing I can do to change that. But why would it ever give more money to the people who already lied to us and cheated us? That just makes you stupid, everybody. So let's not give any more money. And that's Hillary Clinton. You want to give more money to the government, Mrs. Clinton? That's your vision of America. My vision of America is a government that already spends too much. I'm not giving them any more of my money. We're not raising taxes for Social Security or anything else because we already take too much money and spend too much money. And that's why we have to fix these entitlements. That's the second thing that's really important. The third thing that's really important in our country's future is to make sure that our educational system that we pay a lot of money for starts producing better results. Right now, we're 20th in the world in science. We're 24th in the world in math. There is no way that we can remain the #1 economic and military power in the world if we're producing young people who are 20th in math, or 20th in science rather, and 24th in math. You know that's true. Why is it that that's happening despite all the money we're spending on public education in this country? Why is it? Let me make sure you understand this. It's because of the teachers' unions in this country. The teachers' unions are the single most destructive force to public education in this country, and here's why. They care more about protecting the worst of their members than they care about bringing out the best in our students. It's that simple. That's what tenure is about. Think about what teacher tenure has become. Teacher tenure has become, if you survive for the first 3 years of your career, you have a job for life. For life. Let me ask anybody in this room who's not a teacher. After 3 years of your job, does your boss come to you and say, by the way, buddy, great 3 years, you're here forever. I don't care what you do, how you perform, how accountable or not accountable you are. You could show up to work on time or not show up to work on time. And by the way, too, here's a great deal. Now that you're here for 3 years, you get 4 months off a year. And I'm going to pay you for 12. Does anybody have that job? I don't. Anybody got that job? I didn't think so. But the teachers' unions fight to have that kind of job. Yeah, he said, I'll take it. Yeah, right? Yet, all you hear from the teachers' union is, we need more. We need more. Let me tell you about the average teacher in New Jersey and why there are pension problems throughout the world and why this is a problem that we have to address because it affects education. The average teacher who works 30 years in New Jersey will put $126,000 into their pension and to pay for their health care. Do you know what benefits they receive? $2.4 million. $126,000 in, $2.4 million out. Now listen, I was a political science major at the University of Delaware. I was not a math major, but even I can figure out that's a sucker that's going belly up, right? Yet, what they say is they want more, not less, more. Here's what we need to be spending our money on. We need to have teachers who are going to be accountable. Accountable. The product you produce is the student who walks out of that classroom. Now, you're not the only influence on it. Parents are as well, and the students themselves. But you got to be a bigger part of that. We need to have a longer school day and a longer school year. We need to. Listen, our school year was set up for the agrarian calendar. Now, I don't know about you, but my children this summer were not out tilling the fields during their summer break. There was like soccer camp and baseball camp and computer camp, and no tilling the fields. This is something that goes to an older time in America that doesn't exist anymore. We need to have students in school longer, and we need the school day to be longer as well. We need to catch up. We're 20th and 24th. It's time to catch up, and the only way to catch up is to work harder. Why don't we have a longer school day and a longer school year? Even though when we see in charter schools across America, they have that, and it works. They're producing greater results. Why aren't we changing it in the regular public schools? You know why. Yeah, because the teachers union goes, oh, okay, but no, we need to be paid more for that. Well, hell, man, I'm already paying you for a full year of work and you're only working 8 months. How about working 11? I'll give you that other month. Go ahead. Just get me to 11. We need a longer school day and a longer school year. We need parents to be able to choose where they send their kids to school. We pay enough in taxes that we should be able to choose. You want to send your kid to the local public school? It's a good public school. I went to public school, K through 12. I love the public schools. Just to show you how decisions are made in the Christie family, by the way. I went to public school, K to 12. Mary Pat went to parochial school, K to 12. We got married, we had 4 children. All 4 of our children, parochial school. So you'll want to talk to her after the meeting. But we made the choice because we had the resources to be able to afford to send our kids to parochial school. Not every family has the ability to do that. Every family should have the ability to do that. If you want to send your child to the school that you think will serve them best, we should be able to give you a voucher to be able to go and do that. Because parents deserve to make these choices. And by the way, the reason I like that is not only because parents get to choose, but because then there's competition for the public schools. Right now, man, a system with no competition doesn't have to strive to be better to stay in business. We need our public schools to feel like they need to strive to do better to stay in business, to keep their jobs. That's what you do every day. Man, if you're competing, if you're an insurance broker and you're competing with another insurance broker across town, and that insurance broker, she gives better service, she has lower prices, she has longer hours, she comes to your house to help you, and you say, like, listen, here are my prices. I'm open from 9 to 5. You want to see me, come over to my office. You're out of business, man. And you know that if you want to stay in business, you need to compete. So that's what we need to do for our educational system. The last thing is we need to get the federal government out of it. No Common Core, no federal mandates. Federal government wants to give money to education, write a check to the local school district and say, use it well, and let the local school board and the parents decide how that money is spent, not with a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. pulling the strings. It makes no sense. Those are the 3 biggest challenges that face our country: our national security, entitlements, and education. And the reason those 3 things are the most important is because they're all about the future, not about the past. We cannot live in yesterday, everybody, and we can't have candidates who live in yesterday. We have to have candidates who are going to think about tomorrow. We don't want candidates who are relitigating old wars and old disputes from Washington, D.C., and we got a few of them running, who are all going to worry about, well, let's see, I want to make sure that my past and my family's past is treated the right way, and they're not keeping their eyes on the horizon, on the future. Every one of those things I talked about is about the future. National security is about keeping our country safe so that we can enjoy our liberties and our prosperity in safety and security. Entitlement reform is about making sure, my plan will cut $1.2 trillion to be able to make those systems secure and to be able to put money in some other things that we need to spend in this country. That's all forward-looking. And education is about our future. If we're 20th and 24th in science and math, we're not going to be number 1 anymore, everybody. But you'll notice every one of those things is about tomorrow, not about yesterday. And if you want to win this election, we better nominate a tomorrow candidate, not a yesterday candidate. We nominate a yesterday candidate, everybody. Their yesterday candidate beats our yesterday candidate every day in the week. So let's not do it. Let's be thinking about tomorrow. Let's nominate someone who's thinking about tomorrow, and that's exactly what I'm going to do if I'm the nominee of this party. Yes, sir.
Who's responsible for indicting Hillary Clinton, and why haven't they done it?
Yes. The Department of Justice is, and I hope, and I read that the FBI is now investigating. Now, I want to tell you, I know the director of the FBI. He used to be a colleague of mine. He was the U.S. Attorney in the Bush administration in Manhattan. He then became my boss, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. He then left and went and worked in the private sector for Lockheed Martin and others. And then he was asked to come back and be director of the FBI. His name is Jim Comey. I will tell you one thing about Jim Comey. I have no idea. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know what he's doing. But I know he's a man of integrity. I've met him. I've worked with him. He's a friend of mine. I know him. And so I believe the FBI will approach this with integrity because Jim Comey would not allow anything else to happen. And let me tell you real clearly about what I think as a former prosecutor about what's going on. See, the worst thing about this is the arrogance of Mrs. Clinton. That's the worst part of this, right? Here's a woman who won't answer questions. She's running for president of the United States. You think you'd see her in a room like this, taking any question that comes up? No chance. She doesn't do that. She said to a reporter yesterday, asked her 3 questions in a row, and she said, I'll answer one of your questions because I think that's all you deserve. Well, Your Majesty, so honored to have your presence. See, she's got to answer some questions, and I will guarantee you, when I'm the Republican nominee for president, and I'm on that stage next September, she's never been cross-examined by a prosecutor like me before. And I'm going to ask her some questions like, first, Mrs. Clinton, why were you doing every bit of business as Secretary of State on a private email server that you were keeping in the basement of your house? Why were our country's national security classified secrets going through a private server in the basement of your multi-million-dollar house in Chappaqua, New York? Unlike every other government employee who's doing their official business on the government server. She hadn't answered that question. Then, Mrs. Clinton, when Congress said they wanted to see those emails, why did you wipe that server clean? Why did you delete those emails? Tens of thousands of emails deleted, taken away. Now, the FBI is trying to find them. We'll see what's going to happen. But why'd she delete them? She needs to answer that. Third, she needs to answer why she doesn't believe that she's accountable for her conduct. Her conduct was clearly wrong. She's now, for the first time, I think yesterday, said, well, maybe I could have made a better choice. Remember what she said at the beginning. She said, I did it because I only wanted to carry one device. Now, first of all, anyone who has an iPhone in this audience knows you could put multiple email accounts on your one device. One, so that's a lie. Second, what did we find out later? She had more than one device. Well, so that story doesn't hold together. The real story is this, I believe in my heart. Hillary Clinton doesn't want us to know what she's doing. She believes we don't have a right to know. I'll tell you this, when I'm president of the United States, you have the right to know what your government's doing, and we have the obligation to be held accountable for what we're doing. And the biggest disappointment in this is not just Hillary Clinton, it's the President of the United States. She worked for him. You're telling me he didn't know about the private email account? And now that he does know, for sure, why isn't the president stood up in the Rose Garden and said, Secretary Clinton, I am demanding that you turn over every bit of information to the Justice Department so that there's no stain on our administration? I haven't heard the president say that once, have we? Well, let me tell you this. Whenever there's been any questions raised about me as governor of New Jersey, I stand up and I answer every question. That's what you need to do to be held accountable. American people have a right to that, and our government officials need to be held accountable by you. So I hope that the FBI is investigating and investigating well. I hope that my confidence in my friend Jim Comey is well placed, and I believe it is. But then ultimately, the Attorney General of the United States is going to have to decide what to do. I don't know her very well, so I can't vouch for her. But I hope, this goes back to what I said in the beginning, if we're a country of laws and not a country of men and women, and she's committed a crime, then just like David Petraeus, who mishandled classified information despite his heroism as one of the great generals in this country's history. He was prosecuted. Sandy Berger in the Clinton administration mishandled classified information. He was prosecuted. If she mishandled classified information and obstructed justice, then she deserves to be prosecuted, and she sure as hell doesn't deserve to be President of the United States. Morning, sir.
These questions. I love to hear what you said about education. I've raised 2 children. Both of them are public school teachers. But my question this morning deals with the Second Amendment. There's been a lot of publicity about people who travel from New Hampshire and other places in New England down through the state of New Jersey on their way to visit relatives or friends or vacation in Florida, whatever. They end up going to jail because they had a legal firearm in their possession. Legal meaning that it was legal for them where they lived.
Right.
Okay? I know that in one of the cases that was highly publicized, you actually issued a pardon to that woman, and I applaud you for that. I would not want to get bogged down with this part of the question, but what took you so long? But more importantly is that it just happened in June. There was a man who came to New Jersey.
North Carolina.
He was from North Carolina, Brian Fletcher.
Yep. Brian Fletcher, I know Brian.
How come you haven't pardoned him yet?
Well, let me explain a few things to you. First of all, the pardon authority needs to be used once we have fully vetted the person who's seeking the pardon. And I don't use pardon authority lightly. Now, I've not only pardoned that one woman, I've pardoned 2 other folks who also were caught up in the same way. But here's the way we do it. When we think an injustice has been committed, and I think that there's the real potential that Brian Fletcher, who you mentioned, who, for those of you who don't know the story, he's a North Carolina cell tower repair person, who, when we had a really bad Durango in the southern part of our state, he came up from North Carolina to help to fix the cell towers. He owns a handgun in North Carolina legally. He brought his handgun with him. That's illegal in New Jersey to do under New Jersey state law, passed well before I became governor. And he was arrested. Now, what we've done is we're working with Brian's lawyer and with Brian to go through his whole background to make sure that when I issue a full pardon to someone, that I'm not issuing a full pardon to someone who's committed other crimes. And so when you ask what takes so long, we do this in a really responsible way. And none of those people that we just talked about ever spent a day in jail. Not one of them.
Brian did, overnight.
Well, when he's first arrested, there's nothing I can do. I can't pardon him the minute when he's arrested. I don't even know he's been arrested. There's 8.9 million people in New Jersey. I don't know every person who's arrested at the moment they're arrested.
No, but
they've spent no. But listen, the 2 questions are different. That has nothing to do with me taking too long. That has everything to do with the fact that the law is what it is in New Jersey, and with a Democratic legislature, they will not change it. In fact, I'll go through what I've done on Second Amendment in New Jersey after we get done with this part of it. Fact is, I want to make sure, before I issue a pardon to anyone, that I'm issuing a pardon to a person who is a good law-abiding person, and I think you would agree with that. And so we work with their lawyers to make sure we do an entire background check on them. We interview them personally to make sure that we get to eyeball these people and say, if we're going to give you a pardon, we want to make sure that you're a good, law-abiding American. If you are, those pardons are issued, and they've been issued to Shanine Allen, to Stefan Josie Davis, and we commuted the sentence early on of Brian Aitken, who was arrested for the very same thing.
Right.
So that's how we do things in New Jersey, and I've used the pardon power to get past laws in New Jersey that I think lead to unjust results that I can't change.
Could I just ask?
Sure.
What's taken you so long is this background check and so forth, and I understand that.
Yeah.
When somebody buys a firearm in a state that has a, an intelligent approach to this, they do a background check in 3 days.
Yeah, I understand that. This is a different kind of background check. This is not the. This
But
is to get. Listen, I don't want to get in a debate with you about whether or not you're spending the appropriate time on a background check, but the governor of any state has full pardon authority. That is to wipe clean all of the past sins. I'm not going to do that until I'm satisfied that the person who's asking for that pardon is a good law-abiding person. And by the way, the people who are doing the background checks in 3 days, that's all they have to do. governor of New Jersey, I have a few other things on my plate,
I
right? So I'm
understand.
not all day, I'm not the pardon factory, okay? I'm not all day sitting there going, okay, let's spend all the resources of the governor's office on deciding whether to do a pardon or not. I'm also running a state of 8.9 million people at the same
understand that.
time. But you asked why in three, I don't understand what the implication of your question was.
3
They
months.
can do it in 3 days. Well, yes, sir, 3 months. And you know what? Nothing's happening to Brian Fletcher in the interim. Nothing. He's not even been charged with a crime yet. He was arrested. The prosecutor's office hasn't even charged him with a crime yet. So nothing is happening to Brian Fletcher today that's hurting him.
Okay, well,
So let's just be clear.
The reason
If
for my
something
question-
happened, if he were put in jail tomorrow, then I'd have to accelerate my process. But if I'm going to do it the right way and have a clear conscience when I sign that document, then I need to do it the right way. And if it takes a little more time than you think, I'm sorry, but that's the way we're doing
Well,
it.
I'm just asking the question because
Well,
we're
yeah, you're-
talking about a constitutional right.
I understand that, sir. And I also understand that people have passed laws in my state, laws that I disagree with. But as I said at the top, I have an obligation to enforce the laws whether I like them or not. And so when I think those laws have been enforced in a way that's unjust, I use the pardon authority. But let's talk about the Second Amendment for a minute rather than
Thank you.
kind of
Thank you.
the process of how I pardon people. The fact is that New Jersey is one of the toughest states on gun laws in the country. And all those laws were passed before I became governor. And since I become governor, what has the legislature attempted to do? They attempted to ban the .50 caliber rifle. I vetoed that bill, and the veto was sustained. They attempted to lower magazine capacity from 15 to 10. I vetoed that. They attempted to put in a statewide gun purchasing ID system where you have to register all kinds of information. I vetoed that. I have now put forward regulations that have been adopted that prioritize the gun permit applications of domestic violence victims. So that if a man or a woman is a victim of domestic violence, has a restraining order against a partner, that application now goes to the top, not just in the middle. So that those people who are most at risk for self-defense get an opportunity to buy their handgun faster than anybody else so they can defend themselves. I've defended the Second Amendment in my state and done everything I can, including the pardons that we talked about, to make sure that folks are unjust. I now have a group of law enforcement folks out of the Attorney General's office examining every part of this and to try to come forward with some new regulations, if we can, to make it even more fair. But I also have to be honest with you. I got a Democratic legislature who are passing bills that are moving in the other direction. So sometimes as governor, you're on offense, and sometimes you're on defense. On these things, I'm on defense. But, you know, talk to a guy named Scott Bach, who's an NRA board member and the president of the New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Association in the state. And what Scott has said, and he came up to New Hampshire and said this to a group of Second Amendment activists here, that the Second Amendment would be dead in New Jersey if it wasn't for Governor Christie. And that the things I did were absolutely brutally criticized in the press, on the internet, but the reason I did them is because they're the right thing to do, because of what you said. This is a constitutional right, and it needs to be protected. And I'm doing everything I can in New Jersey to make sure that we protect people's Second Amendment rights. And if you gave me a Republican legislature for a week, we'd never sleep, man. We'd never sleep, and one of the things we would fix is the unfair way that we deal with Second Amendment rights in the state. And about Brian Fletcher, if Brian Fletcher deserves a pardon, he's going to get it the minute that I have the clear conscience to be able to put that pen on that paper and use the most awesome authority that we give to an executive in our government, which is the ability to wipe away with one signature a criminal charge. When that work is done and I'm satisfied, I will do it, but not a minute before that. Thank you for your question. Yes, sir. Oh, no, I meant the guy behind you. I'm sorry. I'll get you, though. I'll get you.
I heard you say in the beginning that rather than put addicts in jail, you'd rather see them in rehab. Well, I've lived in Laconia my whole life, and I know addicts that live here. And rehab or anger management is seen as a joke. So I want to know what your plan is for addiction once it's clear to you that rehabilitation is not working.
Well, if rehabilitation doesn't work, they have to go to jail. But the fact is that we're jailing everybody now. More than 50% of the federal prison population are users of drugs who are not dealers and nonviolent. It's not working. They smuggle drugs into prison, they stay addicted, they come out, and they commit more crimes. Let me tell you what's happened with drug courts. Recidivism rate was 62% before we instituted statewide drug courts in New Jersey. Recidivism rate is now 16%. In New Jersey, the prison population in the last 5 years that I've been governor is down 31%. Find another state where the prison population is down that much. And unlike soaring crime in New York City, soaring crime in Chicago, soaring crime in all the major cities in this country, Camden, New Jersey, which used to be characterized as the most dangerous city in America, in the last 3 years under our policies, the murder rate in Camden is down 61%. Do these policies work? Do they work for everyone? No. Could you and I walk around Laconia and find a couple of drug addicts that are reprehensible human beings? You bet we could. Do you think we could walk around and find in treatment centers people who fail in treatment? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean we don't try. Because for a lot of people, it does work. And we need to give people those tools. This is a disease. Now, let me be clear on two things to make this personal. My mother was a lifetime smoker. She was addicted to nicotine. She tried to quit every different way anyone around here who's tried to quit smoking has tried. The nicotine gum, the patch, cold turkey, all of it. She never could quit. When she was diagnosed with lung cancer, not one person said to us, hey, listen, we're not going to give your mother cancer treatment, because she got what she deserved. She knew since 1964 that smoking was bad for her, and she did it anyway. She couldn't quit, she killed herself, so we're not going to help and treat her. We wouldn't want a country that treated my mother that way. Drug addicts to a different drug, not nicotine, but whether it's cocaine or heroin, PCP, whatever it is, they're addicts too, we need to give them a chance. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about every life is precious. And I want to give people a chance. If they fail that chance, then they got to pay the consequences. But right now, we're making them pay the consequences before we even give them a chance. And it's not working. The war on drugs has failed. We've been doing the war on drugs for 30 years, and it's worse now than it was 30 years ago. So I'm saying if you continue to see something that doesn't work, we got to try something else. I'm not saying, and I don't want you to interpret what I'm saying is that this is perfect, and this is the nirvana solution. But every life we save is important to that family. They get a mother or father back, a husband or wife, a sister or brother, they get them back. And let's also remember that this is not about education or socioeconomic class. This can happen to anybody. I'll tell you this story. I went to law school. Obviously, I'm a recovering lawyer. I went to law school, and for any of you who did go to law school in this group, you know in the first year of law school, very stressful, and you put together a study group. Everybody puts together a study group, and my study group was 6 folks, and you get to know those people better than anybody because you see each other at your worst. You have no confidence. You're getting killed in class. You're trying to understand this new way of thinking, and it's hard. So you become very close friends. One of the guys in my study group, he was the guy who went to the Ivy League Law School before he came to Seton Hall, graduated with honors. He was the guy who became editor of the Law Review. He was the guy who got the job first at one of the biggest law firms in our state. He was the guy who became partner first among any of us. He was the guy who married an incredibly beautiful woman who was a doctor. They had 3 beautiful daughters. They had a great house. And on top of it, he was the best looking of all of us, and he was a good athlete. We hated this guy, right? And even as we got older, he would run like 12 to 15 miles a week so that he could continue to be really good looking and stay in great shape. Well, during one of those runs one day, he stepped wrong and hurt his back. And so he went to the doctor because he couldn't bear not being able to exercise every day. And the doctor said to him, listen, it's probably just a muscular thing. We just need you to get the pain down, so we're going to give you some Percocet. Take this, and for a couple of weeks, you'll be fine. Well, a few years after that, I got a call from his wife, who said to me, I kicked him out of the house. he's addicted to these painkillers, and you need to do an intervention with your friends from law school. So we went. He was living with his parents. We went and did an intervention. He, of course, told us there was no problem. He was fine. His wife was overreacting. We were overreacting. Everybody was overreacting. But we convinced him that night to go to rehab. Over the next 8 years, he was in and out of rehabs in 5 different states. In the interim, his wife divorced him. He lost the right to see his daughters. He lost his job. He lost his driver's license. His license to practice law was suspended. He spent all the money he had and had begun to spend his retirement money. And a little over a year and a half ago, on a Sunday morning, Mary Pat and I got the call that we had been dreading for 8 years. They found him dead in a motel room with an empty quart of vodka and an empty bottle of Percocet. Now, by every definition of how we define success in this country, this guy had it. Handsome, smart, great education, great job, great wife, beautiful children, beautiful house, limitless career, right? Limitless life. A lot of us would trade our life for that. It can happen to anyone. There but for the grace of God go I. And that's the way we got to start thinking about this, everybody. There but for the grace of God go I. And so I'm so for treatment, not because I'm soft on criminals, because I spent 7 years of my life putting lots of people in jail for a long time. And I'll continue to do that and enforce that as President of the United States. But I also know that just because my friend failed, died, didn't make it, I wouldn't change a thing that we did to try to help him. Because his life, when I sat at that funeral a year and a half ago and watched his 3 young daughters in the pew next to me sobbing because there was no more father. You know, we can't allow that to happen willingly in this country. So for the people who are beyond redemption, and there are some, at least beyond redemption in this life, well, then we're going to have to put them in jail and keep them there. And especially for the violent ones, they go to jail right away. Because you're going to commit violence in this society, you need to be put away. But for those whose lives we have a chance to save, I want us to try to save those lives. Because I believe that every one of those lives is a precious gift from God. And it's not up to us to decide when that life ends. It's up to God to decide when that life ends. And if we can help lengthen it, that's what I want to do. So I'm frustrated by the crime that exists, and that's why we've worked to lower it. But I also want to try to save these lives, and I think we need to do that. So thanks for raising the question. I appreciate it. Now we'll go to you.
Thank you. Governor, your take on big government, Washington, D.C. specifically.
Yeah.
I know that your experiences lead you in a very methodical way of reducing the size of that, so I get that. But in addition to that, what would your feelings be if you approached reducing government in a way and also fragmenting it? In other words, putting out to areas like Laconia and maybe move a department out here where you have 1,000 people who would be employed out here, which would be a big economic boost for a community like Laconia and many communities throughout the country. So I thought I'd throw it out to you.
Sure.
I hope it's a softball because you've done it before.
Listen, I think that, you know, first off, like you said, we've done this before. It can be done. But you just have to be willing to say no to people. See, here's the hardest thing in politics for some folks is to say no. Because like every one of you who say something that you want or think would be valuable or helpful, you know, you want me to say yes. And if I say yes, you smile. And if you smile, you might like me. And if you like me, you might vote for me. Right? This is a good thing in my business. It's a bad thing in the government. Because every time I say yes, I want you to visualize that as I'm saying yes, I'm putting my hand in your, because I got no money to pay for this on my own. I spend your money. So everything we do, we better make sure it's a priority. Because if we don't, we're wasting your money. Your money. So first thing you got to do to make government smaller is to say no. And in terms of fragmenting it, listen, I believe in the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution says, in the 10th Amendment. Anything that's not listed in this document, that power goes back to the states. They've forgotten that in Washington, D.C. They think it's the opposite. They grab whatever they want, and then whatever crumbs are left to the states. The states created the federal government, not the other way around. And we need to decentralize this government a bit. What should the government be doing? It should be protecting our national security. That's a federal issue. What should the government be doing? We should be making sure that our homeland security is protected. But we've gotten into things like health care, for instance, at the federal level. I don't see health care in the United States Constitution. I don't believe Obamacare should be in place. I believe Obamacare should be repealed. And it should be replaced. It should be replaced with a system that the states decide. And so why would it make any sense to have the federal government run health care in every state when each state is so different? Look at our two states. We're about the same size geographically, but you have 1.3 million people here in New Hampshire, ballpark. We have 8.9 million people in New Jersey in the same space. That's why we're a little aggravated. We're all on top of each other. You know, it's a lot of stuff going on in New Jersey. So when I get a little edgy, just understand, we got people everywhere in New Jersey. Our healthcare system in New Jersey, the problem for access is not like it is here in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, a lot of the problem for access is distance. Where can you find a specialist that's close enough to you? Where can you get to a hospital that's close enough to you? If you live in the Lake region, you live in the North Country, it's a lot more difficult. For vets in particular, really difficult. So that's the problem in New Hampshire. In New Jersey, you trip over a hospital every 4 miles. I mean, you can't get away from a hospital if you want to in New Jersey, and a Medici Center and all the rest. We got more access that way, but you know what our problem for access is? Cost. Everything in New Jersey is more expensive than it is here, including getting your health care. And a lot of people can't afford it because they just don't have the money to do it. So the decentralization of government that makes sense to me is, why shouldn't New Hampshire decide what's the best health care system for New Hampshire? I trust the legislature here to do that and the governor to do it. This governor may be a little less than others, but nonetheless, I trust the legislature. I mean, you know what I mean by tripping over hospitals every 4 miles. See, that's what happens in New Jersey. In New Hampshire, you trip over a state rep every 4 miles. Right? I mean, you guys got 400 of these people, right? Everywhere you go, you see a state rep. Yeah, I know. They're everywhere, right? Good to have you here. You know. But the reason I bring that up is not just because there's 400 of them, but it gets to the point. If you don't like the healthcare system that New Hampshire's created, you can go to a state rep anytime, see them, and have your input. Much more than you're going to have input to some bureaucrat at Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. You can actually see the people who are making those decisions here. So your principle of decentralizing government not only helps to put people to work, but what it also does is to help you control it more. The closer it is to you, the better you can control it. The further away it is, the more distant it is, the less you control it. I want a government, as a governor, that the local folks can control. And that's the attitude I'll take as president. Well, I got enough to do as president of the United States. I don't need to be dealing with every little healthcare problem in New Hampshire or Wyoming or Arizona or New Jersey. And so I like the idea that you put forward for decentralizing government, not just for the reason that you stated, but for a lot of other reasons too. The closer it is to the people, the better it'll be. You have something you want to say too?
Yes, and I agree with that. And the reason I'm thinking in one way of it is that if you have a department, certain departments out throughout the country, whether it be Iowa, whether it be New Hampshire, whether it be Laconia, those people that are now working for the federal government have a sensitivity and a pulse and a good feeling for what that geographic area represents and what those people are about and what they need.
Absolutely agree. Agree. All right. Yes, ma'am. Hi.
This is going to be my first election, so.
All right. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Hi. How would you support men and women looking to start families while continuing on with their careers, especially millennials and parents, or young parents, in issues like family sick leave, maternity leave, and equal pay?
All right. We've already lived that life. Mary Pat's worked from the moment she left college up until I decided to run for president. And now she's working for me. But for the last 30, I don't pay well, yeah. Thanks. Yes. that's true. The fact is that we've lived that life already, and we know the pressures and the strains that go along with it. To try to have a career, make a living, support a family, and have a family, and then raise a family, be a productive part of their lives. And so here's what I think about the issues you put forward, and I'll start from bottom and work my way up. On equal pay, this should not even be a question, okay? In fact, in our family, it's unequal pay. She's always made more than I did. And seriously, all my tax returns are out there. Go and look. I remember one of my friends, when I first had to release my tax returns when I was running for governor in 2009, it became clear for the first time that Mary Pat made a multiple of what I made. And one of my friends called me and he said, hey man, God, I didn't know Mary Pat made that much more than you. Does that kind of like make you feel a little inadequate? And I said, no, 3 words, joint checking account. All goes to the same place, baby. I feel I want her to be as successful as she can be. So equal pay in our family is something that we've lived. And for me, employing women in the times when I've had the choice to who to hire. My chief of staff right now is a woman. My policy chief is a woman. All of them are paid equally to any of the men who have positions, and those two are paid more than most who work for me. That should not be a question in this country anymore. Women should be paid based upon their value that they bring to their organization, not their gender. And we should make sure that we are encouraging every business in this country to do that way. That shouldn't even be a question anymore. Now, on maternity leave, I believe these decisions need to be made by the individual businesses that are making them, because each business is different, and how liberal or conservative their leave policy is, has to be decided by those businesses. But I do believe that there has to be certain minimums that people are allowed to have when they have a child to be able to go out so they don't lose their job. Now, on paid sick leave, I think was the last one. I'm very concerned about the government getting into this area, okay? I think the more regulations we put on business that cost them money, the less jobs they're going to create. And so I don't believe the government should be dictating that piece of it. And so while I feel strongly about the first 2 points you had, the third one, I think if a business wants to give, I think in a lot of business instances, it's in their interest to give paid sick leave so they don't lose a good employee and a valuable employee. But I think the businesses need to make those decisions. And I think if government starts to tell them that they have to do that too, that just adds more costs, adds more regulation, and creates fewer jobs. And that's the other concern I have for millennials, because we have a number of them in our house that we'd like someday to leave, actually. We love them to death, but at some point it might be nice if they went out on their own. They'd like it, we'd like it, right? I want your generation to have the same opportunities I had. When Mary Pat and I graduated from college, we went to college together at the University of Delaware. I graduated in 1984. She's younger. We won't talk about specifically, but she's younger. When we were there together, though, when she started to apply for jobs, we weren't worried about getting a job in the mid-1980s. We were just trying to figure out which one are we going to take. Which one's going to be the best opportunity for us? That's not the case, as you know, anymore. We have a son who's now going to be a senior at Princeton this fall. And we had a group of his friends over, and they talked about how hard it was for them to find summer jobs this summer. And these are kids who go to Princeton. They go to a pretty good school. If they're worried about getting jobs, everybody of your generation is worried about getting jobs. So the reason I don't want to pile more regulation and more cost on businesses is I want them to use the money they make to create more jobs. So you have the opportunity to go and buy a home, to have a family clear of conscience about the cost of it, that you're able to save for vacations, to save for college education for those children, to be able to live the life that you want to live. And I don't believe the government makes that happen for you. I believe that this country is at its best when there are two things that determine your success: your ingenuity and your work ethic. If you have a great idea and you're willing to work as hard as you can work, then that should be what determines your success, not some government policy. Mrs. Clinton's going to talk to you about minimum wage and paid family leave and all the rest of this stuff, and none of those things create a job, not one. What we need in this country is more jobs that pay well, that give you an opportunity to have your life be everything you want it to be, whatever that is. Last piece is you should define what that is. Success should be defined by you, not by me. By you. What do you consider to be a successful life? What will make you happy? And I want the kind of country where you get to make that decision without me interfering as big bad government. But you deciding what's a successful life. Because what may be successful to you may be different to me, this young lady, this guy, it could be totally different. And you should have the freedom and the opportunity to be able to determine that. And congratulations on your first vote.
Thanks.
My first vote was 1980. I turned 18 in September of 1980. And
That's
my
the
first
same
vote
time.
was for Ronald Reagan. And I'll tell you, I hope that you feel as proud of your vote 36 years later, your first vote, as I feel my first vote for Ronald Reagan 36 years later. And vote for me, would you please? All right. I am told by my staff I can take one more question, which means I will take two. The reason for that is I want them to know that I am still the. So let's go to this gentleman over here.
Governor Christie, like you, I was born, should have the opportunity to grow to their full potential.
He's partnered, and now his country is partnered. Are saving lives every day in Africa now for that reason. Same thing with malaria. I think the United States has a role in partnering with the rest of the world to help to protect and preserve liberty and lives. And as president, now, I don't know exactly what that program is like, because I don't know exactly what the challenges are that we're going to face at that time when I take the oath of office. But what my commitment to you is that I believe as President of the United States, my first and most is to present and protect the lives and the property of the people of the United States. But I also have time to do other things as well. And America wants to be a leader, because if we're not a leader, someone else will fill that.
Sandy, what is the state of New Jersey doing to prepare for the next hurricane?
Yeah, October 29th, 2012 was, one of the worst days of my life. The second worst natural disaster in American history came ashore in my state, just north of Atlantic City. Remind all of you, this is the week of the 10th anniversary of Katrina. All about that and the awful things that happened there, and contrast that with what happened in New Jersey after Sandy. 65,000 homes. 75% of our state was without power. Obstructed. Every school in New Jersey was closed. We had 50. Nearly 3 years later. Here's what we're doing to make sure that if another storm comes, ready. We are broadening our beaches and building a dune system from the tip of Cape May to the Bay Shore at the northern part of our state. In the places in our state where the dunes were built before Sandy, the damage was monumentally less. In the places where there were no dunes, it washed away entire towns. So we're going to have that. We are making our power plants our water treatment plants and our wastewater treatment plants more resilient. We're building walls around them, backup generation systems that can be there if we need them. We have now done, the first project is now underway in the United States to have a microgrid at our mass transit area, so that if the power goes down, our trains can continue to run, so people can continue to move around our state, even if the highways are blocked. We have a sheltering system now that worked very well during Sandy, but will work even better if we have another problem or issue from the things that we learned. We now have mental health systems that are still working to help the people who were affected by Sandy, because we saw an increase in domestic violence and an increase in suicide after Sandy. We learned that all these things are interconnected, and it's going to help make us much better prepared for the next time. I pray the next time never comes, at least not at that scope and that scale. Because I could tell you, the first day after Sandy, I was sitting in the Emergency Operations Center in Trenton, and the first helicopters were able to get up in the air to show us the damage. And they were flying over a barrier island at the Jersey Shore that runs from a town called Point Pleasant to Island Beach State Park, which is a state park in New Jersey where people go to enjoy the beach. This is one of the most heavily populated places in New Jersey during the summer, this strip of land. And there's a highway that runs the length of this strip of land, Route 35, runs the strip, the entire length from Point Pleasant down to Island Beach State Park. The helicopters were flying over, and they were giving us camera view of what was going on. And I was completely disoriented. I couldn't recognize. I said, where are they? And they said, no, they're over the barrier island. And I said, where's Route 35? So they went down a little bit lower. There were homes in the middle of Route 35. Then they took me over to the bay. I saw 5 homes, full homes, bobbing up and down in the bay. They rode along the beach. The homes were gone. The only way you knew there was a home there was on a few of them, you saw the in-ground pools still there. But there was no other evidence that a home had ever been there. When I got on the ground, finally, 2 days later, we got on a boat and went through the bay. We were dodging these homes. The force of the storm was so great that I looked in the window of one of these homes, and this woman, whoever had lived there, her clothes were all still hanging on the hangers in her closet. That's how great the force was. It moved so quickly. It didn't even rock it a little bit. It drove it into the bay. I walked along the beach. The whole back of a home was torn off, and I saw a family room and a bar. And all the bottles of liquor were still on the shelves. The force was so great, it just tore the back of the home off, but didn't shake the home enough to knock the bottles off the bar. It looked like a science fiction movie. And it's images that I'll never forget. And I will tell you that 4 years ago, there were a lot of people who encouraged me to run for president. And I decided not to. I'd only been governor for 16 months. And in my heart, I really didn't believe I was ready to be president of the United States. So I did not run, even though lots of people wanted me to do it. And people say to me now, 4 years later, well, you're running now, what's different? There's lots of things. I'm older, I'm smarter. We hopefully all get smarter as we get older. But also, a crisis, and you are the person who's responsible not only for rebuilding your state, but also for embracing your state and trying to bring their psyche back. You haven't forgotten them, that everything's going to be okay. It trains you for the first time some bad news is given to me and people look at me, what now, sir? I've lived going out into those streets and seeing people crying. I remember a woman, which is a middle-class town in our state, Middlesex County on the Bay. And she's an older lady in her 70s. And when she saw me walking down the street, she grabbed me by the hand and she said, Governor, you have to come see my house. Come see my house. And this house was so badly damaged that the state police did not want me to go in because they were afraid it could collapse. And I said to them, no, I have to go in with this woman. She's overwrought. So I went in with her. The smell is something that I'll never forget. If I close my eyes now, I can still sense the smell of that awful salt water that had come into her home that drenched everything. And she took me to the living room and she said, what am I going to do? I've lost everything. Her husband had died 2 years earlier, and she said to me, that's his chair. That's the chair he sat in the entire time we lived here. I kept it to remind me of him. Now it's gone. It's my last memory of him. And she started crying, and she grabbed me and she said, Governor, please don't you forget me too. When you go through an experience like that, you're prepared for whatever comes down the road, anything that comes down the road. And so we're prepared for a storm if it comes again, not only physically, but we're better prepared mentally to deal with it too. Because after 3 years now, we know the sun does come up again. We do know that businesses rebuild. We do know that homes get better. And they get rebuilt also. Kids go back to school. And life can get back to a new normal. In New Jersey, the normal we had before Sandy will never again be there. It'll always be a new normal. But it'll be a better, stronger, more resilient normal because of what we've done inside the state and, quite frankly, what the federal government has helped us do as well. And I want to just tell you this. Yeah, lots of people who voted against Sandy Aid. Lots of people in my party voted against Sandy Aid. Yet some of those same people, some of whom are running for president right now, when they had a crisis in their state, they jumped up and down and said, we need help. We have flooding. We need help. And lots of folks came to me and said, well, now, are you going to tell people in your delegation not to vote for that because he didn't vote for aid for your state? And I said, absolutely not. When we have a crisis in this country, Americans stand up for other Americans. And the small among us will be parochial about it. Well, I've lived it. I'm never going to say no to people who have suffered a natural disaster in this country and need help from other Americans. And you know what the great thing is about Americans? You didn't say no either. Tens of millions of dollars donated to the Red Cross. Mary Pat ran the Hurricane Sandy New Jersey Relief Fund and raised $40 million from people not only in this country but around the world who wanted to help our state rebuild. It's a great country, and I want to be the kind of leader that doesn't lower the dialogue but raises it. So when they had those floods in Texas, I didn't say just because Senator Cruz didn't vote for Sandy Aid that we shouldn't vote for aid. I stood up and said, give aid to Texas. Because the people who are suffering should not be penalized by the hypocrisy of their leaders. Americans are better than that. And so we care about what happened in Sandy, and I'm proud of what I did every minute in Sandy. We didn't get everything right, but we worked hard every day to make sure we rebuilt our state's psyche and its infrastructure. And, you know, there's a couple weeks left in the summer. Come to the Jersey Shore, man. It's great. I know I'm on the seacoast and the lake areas here in New Hampshire, but it's pretty nice in New Jersey, too. Come to New Jersey and see it. It's a rebuilt place, and it's a lot better than it was beforehand. I want to thank all of you for coming this morning. I tell people in New Jersey all the time who ask me what it's like to run for president, I tell them that if they're getting cynical about politics, they should come to New Hampshire. They should be here this morning, August 29th, on a Saturday morning. A room full of New Hampshire citizens are here to listen to one of 17 candidates for President of the United States because you know that your job is going to be huge in determining who the next President of the United States is. If that doesn't reinforce your belief in our democracy and that it works, your presence, your questions, makes me even more optimistic about our country's future than I was before I started running for president. So I want to thank you for being a part of that. Second thing I want to end with today is this. We went through a whole bunch of issues today, lots of different issues that people wanted to talk about, and there's lots more that we could talk about, and we will over the course of the next 5.5 months here in New Hampshire. And I intend to do 100 town hall meetings in this state. You're number 19. We're going to keep grinding away and doing this because I want to meet as many people as I can and hear from as many people as I can. But all these issues we've gone over, they're all important, but they can't be just what determines who you vote for president, because no matter how many different issues you ask me, there are going to be things that are going to happen when I'm president that we could never have anticipated, that you couldn't ask me about and gotten an answer on. I mean, think about it. When I ran for governor of New Jersey, nobody asked me what I would do if we got hit with the second worst natural disaster in the history of our country. Yet it happened. There's nothing in the new governor's manual to tell you how to do that, okay? What you need to know is who the person is. It's more than just a list of promises and accomplishments. That's part of it. But it's also who the person is. So I'll just end by telling you who I am. We all are, I believe, predominantly a product of our mother and father. Sometimes we like that, sometimes we don't. But we are predominantly a product of our mother and father. I have an Irish father, and I had a Sicilian mother. Oh yeah, you're laughing. You know what that means? That means at a very young age, as the oldest child in that family, I became expert at dispute resolution. These are two highly emotional folks. My father, who's 82 years old, a great guy. We're live streaming this town hall, like we live stream all of them on the internet. My dad is at the Jersey Shore right now. I know he's watching. Good morning, Dad. Good to see you. Because he texts me afterwards and critiques me. I was on Fox and Friends the other morning. He said, liked your energy. You could be a little more energetic. Like, okay. Good answers, though. Direct. Very good. My dad, if he were here this morning and you got to meet him, you'd see he's this gregarious, outgoing guy. He'd be hugging all of you after the town hall meeting. He'd be telling you embarrassing stories about me when I was a kid. All the great things that a fun-loving, laughing Irish father does. In my family growing up, though, I told my dad this for a long time, in the automobile of life, Dad was merely a passenger. Mom was the driver. Mom was judge, jury, and executioner in the house. She relished that job, and she was the one who set the rules. Here was the biggest rule in my house growing up. There is no suffering in silence. She said to us all the time, you have a problem, I want to hear about it. You have a complaint, I want to share. Come to me and tell me, well, 4 weeks ago I was My mother never let any. She was upset about something, you heard it. When we got older, it got to the point where, like, Mom, enough, all right, we hear you. She goes, no, no, no. I need to get off my chest. You need to hear it now. The deathbed confessions in this, Christopher, you're going to hear it now. And that's the way she raised us. That was the house I grew up in. And so, you know, I said, my dad's, as you may have figured out from one of my earlier answers on the drug stuff, my mom passed away in May of 2004, 11 years. Beside the birth of our 4 children, it was the most powerful moment of my life. My mother was giving permission to let her go. And you know what I thought at that very moment? Damn, man, she was right. She was right the whole time. There were no deathbed confessions. There didn't need to be. Because we had said it all to each other already. Every grievance had been aired. Every complaint had been debated. And most importantly, she knew I loved her. And I knew she loved me. And so I did as I was told. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, okay, Mom, I'll go to work. And she said, good boy. And I left. That afternoon, she went into a coma, and 3 days later, she died. And we never spoke again. But I have to tell you, everybody, I have no regrets. Not one. And the reason I have no regrets is because she taught me how to live my life. And it worked out. So, you know, as one of the most psychoanalyzed politicians in America, right? You know, when I say, get the hell off the beach, or sit down and shut up, and people go, why is he acting that way? Why does he say those things? Why does he do it that way? You now know it's her, right? It's her. That's what she taught me to be. That's the way I was raised. That's the way I was brought up. And I know that if my mom were still alive today, to see this circus that my life has become, she'd have lots to say, for sure. But I know there are 2 things she would tell me for sure. The first thing she'd say is, so, you're running for President of the United States, Mr. Big Shot. I changed your diapers. I know who you are. Don't you change with me. My mother would want me to keep my head on my shoulders. She would want me to continue to be the person she raised me to be. And she'd remind me of that. Second thing I suspect she'd say is, okay, Chris, if you're going to do this, if you're going to run for president, if you're going to ask these people to give you the most trust that they can give to anyone other than a member of their family, their vote for President of the United States, you better tell them everything. You better not hold back, because that's not what we do in this family. In a trusting relationship, we share everything. And then we never have to wonder how the other person thinks or feels. That's the way she raised me. And so that's why I say get the hell off the beach, and that's why I say sit down and shut up when someone needs to be told to sit down and shut up. That's why I do those things. I do them because that's the way she taught me to be, and I think it worked out pretty well. And so all these different promises I make and the aspirations I put forward about things I want to do, well, I mean those, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I get them done. But there are 4 things, just 4 things, that I can promise you for sure I will do if I'm President of the United States. 4 things you'll get for sure, because these are totally under my control. 1, you'll never have to wonder about what I'm thinking. I'll tell you. 2nd, you'll never have to wonder how I'm feeling. You'll see it. 3rd, you'll never have to wonder what I'm willing to fight for, because you'll see me fighting for it. And 4th, you'll never have to wonder how hard I'm willing to fight, because you'll understand it by the way I conduct myself. Now, those 4 things, if you get those 4 things out of a President of the United States, then we can together make this country better, make it a leader again at home and around the world, and to make sure that those millennials have the opportunity to have just as great an American life as we've had. That's our moral obligation to them. And if I'm President of the United States, I'm going to make sure that each and every one of us are inspired to fill that moral obligation through honesty and candor and respect and hard work. That's what we need to get back to in this country, and when you elect me president, that's exactly what we'll do. So thanks for coming this morning. I appreciate it.